look at some of the
your way of saying, well,
practices
saying, you can
that
if actually you're spending
I
more
try
time
and do with the business.
you're going to get that.
So everybody does iterative development. Everybody's familiar with that? Right. Is there like, what do you use? XP, Scrum, GSDM, some version of that? So everybody's familiar with the backlog? Stories? User stories? So a couple things. Just reconfirming value. We want to be driven by business value, but we have to also put the customer's glasses on it. And say, was the customer paying for this? Was the customer is there value to the customer in this? And then still be driven by the business value. Right, so you need to know what's valuable to the customer. I put this up here because we want to pay attention to the discovery of customer value. So I find an increment. I think it's a high priority from a business standpoint. I still have to interact with the customer to say, is this going to achieve the value for you? Right, you see the two? So that discovery part we want to pay attention to. So this value stream, I heard it mentioned earlier, value stream, it's the flow of when I conceive that there's value, I discover there's value to the customer, I discover there's value to the business, to when I realize it. I want to make sure we understand that's when you realize it. I think Toyota, their value stream is when a customer says, I want a car, and they get the money through the dealer, through the financial system. It's when they get the money that they end their value stream. Okay, so we want to pay attention to when we realize it. Now, that changes a lot of things. That means that, you know, I do a project, I don't disband the team and I stop thinking about it. I look at when I get the business benefit. So I pay attention to how it got deployed, and how it got implemented, and how much return I got. You guys following that? Yeah. That's important because projects, usually you pull a team together, you build the stuff, you elevate it into production, and you disband the team. And then when the customer finally starts using it, you find out these little mods that if you did, it would be really valuable, but the team's already gone. So then I don't know how you get those out. Production support or, you know, some other stream. So that means that we're not paying attention to the value stream. So business-driven, I call this business-driven software development. Now I do an exercise. I said, is the business involved in your projects? And I'll ask people, and they say, yeah, absolutely. And they say, well, how are they involved? Well, they prioritize what we work on. Okay. They sit down, they do the requirements. They're like, okay. So to me, that's involved. That's not driven. Driven is where every increment I give you, I go back and replan against my portfolio and say, it's the highest value. You see a difference? So one is involved, and now that's good they're involved. But the other is truly driven. Is this what I want to get, spend my money on to get the highest return? That's business driven. Continually replanning and saying, is this the next highest increment that I can do? So you have that curve in mind. And I'm doing these increments. So if I see it flattening out, I'll say no, go somewhere else and find it. That's driven. Now the other aspects of it are the business never should ask, what am I going to get by this date? Right? They should know what the velocity of the team is. And they should know what they want. And so they should be able to figure that out. That's a hard shift. I've seen that happen only twice so far, where the business is truly running what IT is working on. And they always know what they're going to get. And they're always reprioritizing. They make their increments smaller. They make their iterations shorter. So they have a lot more flexibility in moving. They have a better relationship with the IT folks in terms of how short can, how small can I make it where you can still extend enterprise systems. It's an evolution. You guys following? It's an evolution on how it goes. So they continually validate, they manage what they want the teams to work on. So I think Bob referred to this minimal marketable feature. This is the smallest chunk that I can realize value. It's bigger than what I can build. I can build smaller, especially if I'm systematically evolving. Remember, if you're doing this, it's hard to find an MMF because you need the whole chunk in order to get the value. So it's the smallest chunk that I can realize value. I'm going to show you an example of this. Business capability. This is functionality that supports some business functionality that adds value to the customer. And a feature is a combination of these business capabilities for some specific scenario. So that's the kind of the terminology. I'll give you an example of this. So a feature is a combination of capabilities for a specific scenario. Use case. How many use cases? So, again, this is kind of training and coaching I do with the business side, so that's why I'm going through these. But I want them to understand all of these responsibilities are on the business side. So I ask the question and I try and put names when I put a team together. Like, who's going to do this? What are their names? When are they going to be available? Do you want me to work on this chunk? Do I have all the people from the business side to define it, to prioritize it, to fund it, to accept it, to interact with the user and say, yeah, that's going to work? And if not, I won't work on the chunk. Right? So we have this mentality in terms of the value stream. If I can't, so you guys do iteration plans on an iterative basis. So they give me a chunk. If I don't know how to get the chunk out and believe I can, I won't accept it in. Real simple logic, right? Don't give me a chunk and you can't tell me how I'm going to get it out. But getting it out means I've completed it and they're going to validate it and accept it. They can't tell me that, I won't accept it in the iteration. And so they have to be prepared. They have to know they got the people, they have to know exactly what the acceptance criteria is, they have to know a lot of things before I'll ever accept it in a planning session. So the point here is this could be one person, it could be a team around one person. Product owner, product champion, you guys familiar with that term? So there's two pipelines. There's the business side. What should I work on? What order should I work on it? And what's the right size? On the business side, that's what I'm paying attention to. And on the development side, I have to balance the iterative aspect of how I can build it in the time frame, right? So again, we want the balance on these two. But our cycle has to include getting the feedback, because maybe I'll do more on the same chunk because I'm getting more value from it as opposed to another chunk. So this has to be a continual thing. It's not do it once on the annual basis and then follow the plan that you come up with. Does that make sense? So the more you get into the mode of saying, okay, we're going to do this activity, a lot of companies do it annually. I don't know what the cycle is that you guys are familiar with, but you know, it starts in August and it's locked down by January. So do that, but do it every quarter, or do it more frequently, is where you get business driven. I'm going to talk about these four containers. Portfolio view, a product portfolio view, which has chunks, like technical term, MMS, a release view, and then I call them sprint or iteration backlogs. Everybody familiar with that term? What the actual team's working on? Okay, so this was an annual plan. Now, I pulled this from templates I put together for this last client. They did business strategic development, which was 3 to 5 years out. I think you see most businesses have some 3 to 5 year business plan. They did what they call design methodology, which was 1 to 3 years out. So they took this plan, they decomposed it with a little more clarity and said, here are the initiatives we want to do for the next 1 to 3 years. And out of that, usually the first year initiatives across the lines of business, they come up with an annual plan that they're going to fund. Does that make sense? So this container is this annual plan. And it was interesting. They're saying, wow, this is a big process. It's like, how can it be that different? Well, we got to do a budgeting for the next year. It's like, well, I don't understand that. They said, well, why don't you understand it? I said, I already know what your budget is. You just have to tell me how to use it. He said, well, how do you know? I said, it's how many resources you have. Right, isn't it? You spend $20 million on IT, that's your budget. So let's just talk about which initiatives are you going to use to get it done. Is your budget going down? No. Is it going up? No. Okay, so it's $20 million. So, you try and simplify it as opposed to this whole business case and everything. I don't care about these that aren't going to make it in the bucket. Right? That's the notion here. I don't want to invest time in it. I want to know what's in this container and what's the priority of what's in the container and what's the criteria you used to prioritize it. So the notion here is that these are projects. This is prioritized high to low, and I want to start decomposing these projects into MMS. I should be able to use that same criteria to take a chunk and say, is it still high priority or low priority? You guys following that?